Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Ed Rush. Ed has many different stories from his experience being a fighter pilot and a serial entrepreneur. And today we're going to be talking to him about his process that he uses to talk to God and draw insights directly from God to help him with his practical choices in his life. This is an episode that's great for anybody. You don't have to be of any kind of faith or denomination to benefit from this process. And there's lots of action-packed stories in this one. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Ed Rush. Ed Rush, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
What's up, Kyle? Man, I've been downstairs pumping coffee, doing push-ups, ready for this interview today. I can't believe it, man. I'm on Story Engine. We're going to put the throttles in the left-hand corner, kick the tires, light the fires. We're going to have the engines in the afterburner. It's going to be awesome, man. Let's do it.
To the danger zone. All right. Well, our audience doesn't know you that well yet, and I'd love it for you to introduce yourself by telling us a bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today.
Yeah, awesome. Such a great way to start our show today. First thing you should know about me is I failed kindergarten. I'm not proud of that fact. I actually have a 6-year-old who just graduated from kindergarten with honors. And as she was graduating, I realized this is not a hard subject. This is like stacking blocks and not eating glue, colors and stories. And that's the first thing you should know. Second thing you should know is I was a fighter pilot. So I actually graduated from Top Gun. So that kick the tires and light the fires reference was a little bit from experience. Wow. The movie is not like real life that much, but yes, I have also watched the movie about 50 times. So went in the Marine Corps, actually ended up in and out of combat. In my F-18, flew all kinds of aircraft. I flew against all kinds of aircraft. I flew against a Chinese-made MiG-21. I flew against a MiG-29. Was in combat in Iraq. That was very interesting. And then I got out. I started writing books, started teaching entrepreneurs. I do big events for entrepreneurs, showing them how to position themselves in the world. And nowadays, I teach people how to literally download their business plan from a conversation with God. So I went from failing kindergarten to being in the F-18, which you think might be juxtaposed to each other. It just goes to show you how simple it is to fly an airplane. I always tell people I can teach anyone to fly an F-18 in 3 sentences. Should I tell the 3 sentences? How should I just do it? Here they are, by the way. When you push the stick forward, the houses get bigger. When you pull the stick back, the houses get smaller. And when you push the button on the stick, all the houses disappear. That's all you need to know about flying the F-18.
And there's a land button.
There's a land button. Yeah. I know there's an airplane that I have my eye on. It's a Cirrus Vision Jet. It's like this small private jet that I could actually fly single pilot, which is really important. And there's an actual button in the airplane called Fly Safe, where if you push the button, the airplane literally flies it, finds the closest airfield and lands itself. I'm like, do that. Why do you even need a pilot? So I haven't been offended by that button. It seems very safe to me, but so
it's always nice to have. I would always opt to have the button if I had the choice. All right. So an important question. Since you mentioned failing kindergarten and then your daughter just graduated with honors, was there any time where you noticed yourself, because of this story, like putting some pressure or encouragement on, like, come on, you need to get this block exercise nailed?
Oh, for my daughter.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Everyone has their own journey. So I have 4 kids. My kids go 20, 18, 16, and 6. And I always tell people I do know what causes that. People ask, like, is it your second wife or your third wife? I'm like, actually, it's my same first wife. We're on like our 9th marriage by now, because if you've ever been married for more than 20 years, you're married to a completely different person, which is a fun adventure. But yeah, we had another child like 10 years later, which was super fun. And actually, when you've had kids that long, you realize you take things a lot less seriously than you used to. Like with your first one, you want to be like a really good parent, and you don't want them to grow up and do drugs. And marry the wrong person. And then when you have your 4th one, you're like, life is good, man. Let's just go to Disneyland. And so I thought, there was a lot of maturity as a person there. There was a lot of maturity as business owner. And I always tell people, like, that's a real story about business too. Like when I first started out as an entrepreneur 20 years ago, I was probably 19, 20 years ago, back in 2006. When I first started out, it was like I stressed everything, dude. Like every email, every decision, all my financial decisions. And nowadays, I kind of stress nothing. I just realized that, like, when you're in receive mode and you kind of let life come to you a little bit more, you end up becoming a lot more successful. And I had one of my sons was a very successful baseball player, and he learned to be a good baseball player when he learned to receive what the game was giving him and not stress out and try to hold the baseball game hostage. If you've ever played baseball or golf, or for that matter, any other game, you realize that when you find yourself in a state of flow, the world just kind of conspires to bless you. And when you're like stressed out and trying to force it to do your will, it won't. And man, if I had to teach myself, if I had a time machine and I could go back 20 years and teach myself one lesson, that would probably be the one right there.
Mm-hmm. To bring the fourth child attitude to
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I
But it
remember an old dad once looked at me and said, "Y'all still cleaning, picking up the pacifier off the floor?" I'm like, "Not with the fourth one, man. It just sits there till she goes and picks it up." So anyway, over to you.
um, it resonates a lot with me, as I've worked at this a lot in my own ways of showing up to my business and having that kind of white knuckle grip and trying to force it, and just allowing yourself to be in that flow state is really counterintuitive to let go a lot of these things, to do what you want to do, to follow what inspires you. Of course, there's important things, but we can do important things without having the tension in every single move about trying to make it as perfect as possible. And I think probably it's really one of the biggest things that I'm working on currently, is where I want to be in my business. The biggest gap is simply having that peace and allowing that. And then I believe that the rest of the results will come. And it will matter less, because that's the peace. And I've worked with a lot of people in the speaking realm, and I see this same over gripping happening when we take the stage or even on podcasts and try to be this perfect person. And it changes and affects how people, even what I would talk about or why would I talk about these things. And
Yeah.
so what you've discovered in both personal and a professional life is a really powerful thing. And I think it's interesting you say receiving, and being able to, particularly like us, we're both men, there's a very masculine approach to going and getting the thing and taking it for yourself. And putting yourself in a receiving mode is not something that's always intuitive or natural for men, and frankly women for that matter, but for the same reasons, as a lot of high achieving women find themselves in very masculine states. And so tell me a little bit more about like this process of opening yourself up to receiving,
Yeah.
and how that's evolved for you over the years.
Big time. It started, by the way, when I almost lost an airplane. So if you're listening and you have a pen, write this very important point down. And the point goes like this: let go for dear life. You've heard people say, hold on for dear life. The most important lesson I can teach you as an F-18 pilot is let go for dear life. When I was in an airplane, it's all the way back when I was like a very high level instructor pilot, I was flying with a really young student. I was going to teach my young student how amazing I was as a pilot. And I ended up almost killing myself, frankly, embarrassing myself, which you're not even sure which one's worse, dying or embarrassing myself
Mm-hmm.
as a senior pilot. But we ended up in a dogfight where my student executed a turn, I executed a turn, and as I took the turn, I went nose high on what's called a double Immelman. So I had just done a loop, then I did a second half of a loop, basically two half loops, and that would have immediately given me the win in that dogfight. And as I was executing this maneuver, I underestimated how much airspeed I had, and essentially I ended up in a directly nose high F-18 pointed directly at the sky, and I ran out of airspeed and ideas at exactly the same time. If you're in an F-18, the F-18 has amazing flight control systems, very slow speed, good fly-by-wire systems. But if you have no air going over your wings and you're at 20,000 feet above the ocean, you're not flying anymore, you're falling. And I quickly went into an out of control mode in the airplane. Literally, my entire windscreen filled up with the view of the ocean, all blue. I was over the Sea of Japan. That's one of the most shark infested waters in the entire world. And I looked up at my heads up display. That's my display telling me if I'm climbing or descending, turning right, turning left. According to that display, I was falling to the ground at 20,000 feet per minute. And I looked up at my heads up display again and saw that I was 20,000 feet over the ocean. I'm no genius. I failed kindergarten. I'm not great at math. But I can tell you that if I'm at 20,000 feet and I'm falling to the ground at 20,000 feet per minute, I've got a minute to live. And so they teach you in the F-18 a procedure called the out of control flight procedure. In the F-18, that procedure goes controls release, feet off rudder, speed brake in, if still out of control, throttles, altitude, AOA, airspeed, and yaw rate check when recovery indicated by AOA and yaw rate tones move side forward subsided. Airspeed accelerated above 100 knots, recover, passing 6,000 feet, AGL dive, recovery, not initiated, eject. Literally, it's still stuck in my head. Last time I flew the F-18 was 2006. So like it's still stuck in my head almost 20 years later. And that's because you're forced to memorize this procedure. And you're forced to memorize this procedure because with a minute to live, or in my case, about 35 seconds to live, because I've got to eject at 6,000 feet, you have to be able to execute the procedure properly. And the first step in the F-18 out of control recovery, when you lose your airplane and you're about to die, is to release the controls. I always thought that was crazy. And the most magnificent thing about the F-18 is when they wrote the software for the fly-by-wire system, they wrote it so that if the airplane finds itself out of control, the computer knows how to recover the airplane better than you do. Remember that button I told you about in the Cirrus?
Mhm.
And so the moment you release the controls, it's actually the signal to the onboard computer that it needs to take over and recover or fly the airplane. So sure enough, I'm out of control, 15,000 feet, 14,000 feet, 13,000 feet. I go the entire procedure. I've got actually get my hands on what we call the tow racks, which is just up near the canopy. I'm literally just holding on to the airplane, 12,000 feet, 11,000 feet, 10,000 feet, and just under 10,000 feet, my airplane finds center, the nose pushes over, which is what I wanted to do. And I grab my stick and start flying again. A very embarrassed pilot, a very humiliated pilot, a very alive pilot though. And I was alive because of one principle, which is controls release, let go. And I always tell entrepreneurs, one of the hardest things you'll ever do, and one of the best things you'll ever do, is release the controls. Most entrepreneurs white knuckle their way to success. They're holding on to their income or their profit streams, or they're trying to like manipulate their team or their customers into doing something. And you mentioned speakers. I've trained thousands of speakers at this point. I mean, I can see it when a speaker walks on stage. You can see it when someone's trying to force the audience to laugh at them or to like their story or whatever. And then you can see someone when they're up there and you're like, hey, I really like her. Like she's got a good story. She's got a good way about her. Like that's the kind of person I feel like I would like to have them coach me or whatever. Like when you see someone who really connects with an audience, and we call that authenticity. But there's not a way to force your way into authenticity. You can't study your way into, can't read enough books. You basically have to be you. And to be you, you have to let go of this person's view of you, or what your mom thinks you should have done, or how your dad thought you should have grown up, or what your wife or husband thinks that you should be. And you just simply be you. You just present yourself exactly as you are with your faults and failures and all your flaws. And there's a reason why I haven't had any, plastic surgery or anything. And I'm not saying that it's wrong if someone did. I'm just saying like sometimes you just need to be like okay with the fact that that's exactly who you are. And that's how I'm showing up. And one of the ways to do that is to simply let go. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to go to work. No, you're going to put in a good day's work. Doesn't mean you're not going to do any marketing. You're going to do great marketing, but you're going to do marketing from a place of what you've already received, not from a place of what you don't have. And I'll just say this one thing to leverage that last little point, and then I'll pitch it back to you, Kyle, which is this. Most goal setting systems. So like if you get books on Amazon about goal setting, or if you go look and read books about accomplishing objectives or goal settings, most goal setting systems start with the thing you don't have. Let's say you want to be worth $1 million, but you don't have $1 million, but you want to be worth $1 million. So what you do is you sit here with no $1 million, and you look forward to the day when you're like, man, I can't wait till I have $1 million. And you focus on that and you put your emotions around that. If you follow goal setting systems, you like anchor yourself emotionally in that place. What is that going to feel like when I have $1 million? Well, the truth is, what essentially you're doing is you're showing yourself something you don't have. You're leveraging from a place that you don't. Where the most powerful force in the entire world when it comes to emotions is the emotion of gratitude. And so when I think about that, like I look into the future, one of my goals is to be worth $1.2 trillion because I figure that'd be awesome. And I could change the world if I had $1.2 trillion. And so when I'm looking at that, instead of a goal, I'm literally putting myself into the future and going, man, thank you so much in my prayer. Thank you, God. I'm so thankful that I'm in this space right now. I'm literally present in that moment. That, instead of like the discouragement you have between the distance and the goal that you have right now, and there you end up with gratitude. And gratitude is the most powerful force in the world for change. If you can sit literally in the present moment, in the future, in your goals or dreams, and find yourself in a place of gratitude, you will literally change the world. And it all starts with what I just said: letting go of striving, letting go of difficulty, letting go of contention. Anytime you find those areas in your life, those little areas of friction, that's just an area that you need to begin to let go. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the conversation. I have a conversation coming up with a team member, which is going to be a very challenging conversation for both of us. We're going to get over it. We're going to get past it. Not saying that you're not going to have that conversation. It just means that you're not going to white knuckle your way into that conversation. You're going to do it in that state, like you just said, of flow.
Can you tell me a story that mirrors the F-18 story, but inside of your business life?
All right. So, man, I could probably tell you about 100 stories, but when it comes to I'm just going to say, I'll just put this idea out here of the idea of just receiving. My experience, and I'm a person who spends, this book over my shoulder, I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, called God Talks. I spend a lot of my time during the day in a conversation with God. Just so you know, if you're listening to this story or to this show, I didn't just give you some sort of like a prescription. I didn't tell you that one religion or anything like that. I'm just simply telling you my story. I've literally taught atheists how to hear from God. Okay. And I will just tell you from experience, there's a creator of the world who thinks you're amazing and wants to have a conversation with you. And when you're up for that conversation, you will find that many of your conventions begin to break fairly quickly. And I just come off, the story begins with me just coming off a fairly frustrating event. We do big live events. That's one of the big revenue generators of our business. It's definitely the place where the community is built. I feel like lives are changed at those events, and we've done some really big events. And I had just come off an event that was, let me just put it this way. It just didn't produce the way that we wanted it to. There was just something off about it. And every one of you who owns a business knows there's times in your life where you're like, there was just something that didn't work about that. And I don't know why. And it's really frustrating. And you have expectations that come into things, which comes into the story as well. And I'd come out of that session quite a bit frustrated with myself, definitely frustrated with my team. If I can be really honest, I was frustrated with God because I thought he had given me some promises that things would have been different. And if I'm really, really honest, I think I was really disappointed with myself. I thought maybe that I hadn't lived up to my own expectations too. And so now I've got my expectations about my event. I've got my expectations about the results of my event. I've got my expectations about my team. I've got my expectations on how God should have delivered what I think he should have delivered. And then I've got my expectations on me. If you've noticed, that's 5 sets of expectations. There's a recipe for frustration if you really want to know a recipe for frustration. And so I was sitting on my patio, literally in what I call a God talk, which is nothing more than a conversation with. And I was in that conversation, and I literally saw the 6 months before that event, I was watching myself with my eyes closed. I was literally watching myself refresh a page on my screen that had the number of attendees coming to a website, to our event. And I was watching myself stress over those numbers and like try to send another email out with like another deadline that had that. And God just very clearly spoke to me, and he said, you're coming into a time where you're going to be receiving. You're not going to be charging after things or stressing for things or trying to manipulate the world into giving you what you want. You're just going to be receiving. And I was like, all right, that's cool. I could deal that. I would do that. Now, understand, when you have that, you have to follow that, right? So when you hear that, you have to follow it. So literally,
was it really just cool? I can do that. There was no like,
no.
It was probably difficult.
There's like
right?
1,000 questions after that, right? There's like, okay, what does that mean? Do I still have my team meetings? Do I still send out? I just a big promotion. We were in the middle of a big promotion. Do we still do the big promotion? And the answer to that, by the way, is all yes. It's just that you're not trying to like force and manipulate the world to your way. You're just being who you are in freedom. And I kid you not, 2 days later, a guy showed up on Zoom that I had just met, and he was like, hey, I want to do a coaching group with you. Now, just so you know, right now I have coaching groups that go from $25,000 to $75,000 for a year in terms of the enrollment. So I'm interested potentially in doing more of that. But the guy said, I want to do a coaching group with you. I've got a list of people that I think that would respond to that. And what I want to charge is $10,000. And the moment he said $10,000, I was like, oh man, like, I don't want to charge $10,000. I'm already charging 25 plus. And then he said a month after $10,000. And it basically, he's pitching me on joining him in a program that's a 6-figure a year level program for high performing entrepreneurs. And I was like, yeah, I actually want to do that. And no joke, we started right then putting together a program that's literally a $2 million a year program. My point in saying that is it took me having a conversation about letting go before the thing that I could receive actually delivered to me. And it was only 2 days later that the thing, literally 4X of what the low end that I charged today, came in. So there's a like real practical story.
2 days after the conversation with that person.
Yeah. And I'll just say 2 days after my conversation with God. But I will say it doesn't always happen that fast. It's just I was, teacher when the student's ready, the teacher appears kind of thing for me in that moment. But that was definitely as quickly as I have heard in a conversation with God about a certain strategy where it showed up pretty close to after.
Did you realize it in that moment,
Yeah,
or now
yeah,
looking back on it, you were
yeah. No,
like,
I
wow.
realized it instantaneously. Like at the moment he said 10,000, my heart dropped for a second, and then he said a month, and I was like, oh man, we're definitely going to do this. And then I just saw it, like it was like you could kind of see it. So
Yeah, that's lovely. Okay. So I like this. It was a big live event. Where were you when you were sitting refreshing your page in your
So
office?
I was right outside. So I have this. I live in San Diego. We have this beautiful view. It kind of goes all the way out to the ocean, which is like 10 miles away. And I have this little L-shaped sort of outside couch. And usually what I'll do, and this is a lot of what I teach in the book too, is I'll just sit there, legs crossed, kind of back straight, eyes closed, just breathing in through my nose, out through my nose. And for about 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the time, I'm just breathing, just kind of focusing on my breathing. There's a bunch of different brain states. I won't go into all the different brain states. What I will simply tell you is as you begin to control your breath, you move your brain frequencies down. And my experience is there's a brain frequency right above awake, or right above asleep that's just awake, but really in a perfectly clear moment where you can very, very clearly hear from God. And this is what I teach people to do literally start the breathing and then begin to ask some questions. And when you do that and you ask good questions, you understand how to journal answers, you get really, really, really good answers. I'll just tell you, just so you know, I've had a lot of people come into my exercises who don't even believe in God. I've had atheists that have tried it who have been like, I know, I'm just going to ask and my subconscious is going to answer. And they think their subconscious is answering until their subconscious tells them something that they had no idea their subconscious even knew about, or brings them back to a memory that was like some core memory. And so, yeah, I just sit there and ask questions and journal the answers. And the answers usually bring me to some sort of block or some sort of breakthrough. And usually those are the things as people, as entrepreneurs, there's really two categories of thoughts. There's things that are true and there's things that are false. We call those lies and truths. And fundamentally, one of the most important things you can do is take the lies that you are believing and take them out of your mental coding system and instead insert the truth. Let me give you an example. Maybe an entrepreneur heard from her mom over and over and over again, you will never amount to anything. You'll never amount to anything. You'll never amount to anything. Or maybe she heard from her mom, you're just so annoying. I can't even believe it. You're just so annoying. I can't even believe it. Well, for some people, they just hear that and they move on. But other people, when they hear something like that, what happens is that thought pattern or those words turn into a thought pattern. They get actually coded into the subconscious mind. The subconscious is basically like a missile trying to search for a target. If you give it a target, it'll try to find it, whether it's a good target or a bad target. So if somebody goes, you never amount to anything, you'll never amount to anything, and it becomes a software program in someone's head. Well, as they grow up and as they start a business and as they start to try to be successful, they will find that they constantly sabotage themselves all along the way. That's because they're running a software program that says you'll never amount to anything. And fundamentally, the most important thing you can do as an entrepreneur is find out the software programs you're running that are not true or are debilitating to you. And like I said, that's just a lie. So typically what I'll do is teach people how to have a conversation with God where through your superconscious, which is literally your divine connection, your mind, your brain itself is hardwired to hear from the divine. I can show you scientific proof of that. But in a conversation with God, you simply are asking the things that you're believing that aren't true and you're replacing them with the things that are true. And I think you could agree that a person who's made in God's image is destined for success, is designed and created for success. So a person who's listening to God will hear the lie that I'm believing is they'll hear a lie. The lie is you'll never amount to anything. And when they ask, they'll often hear the truth, which is you're destined for success. And when they remove the lie from their mental coding and put the truth into their mental coding, it literally changes their life. And almost it changes it overnight. Calls will come in, deals will come through. Life will be easier. Relationships will become reestablished, all because of a way of thinking, because the way you think affects the way you act. The way you act affects your results. So if you look at your relationships or your body or your bank accounts, you don't see what you like, simply go back to the way that you think. And fundamentally, that's like hardcore foundation level number one of what I teach when it comes to this God Talks process, because I think that if you get that covered, then it changes everything.
Could you give us like maybe a 20-minute version of this that somebody could start practicing right now and tuning in? Maybe it sounds like something that would be nice in the morning, but
Yeah.
It
It's
could be
perfect.
anytime. Give us an overview of what this looks like.
Yeah, and not only that, this isn't necessarily not only that, but I already have 15-minute versions of this literally available for free online. So whenever you want to get to that, I have 7 straight 15-minute audios that have music and everything set up with them, and I'll tell you exactly the process. It's so simple that you won't even believe that it's so simple. And let me just say before I get into this, you don't have to have any specific religious views. You don't have to belong to a specific religious sect. I tell people you don't even need to believe that God exists. I mean, it helps. Honestly, it helps like a little bit, but you don't have to come into this. You don't even have to believe the process that I'm teaching you right now works. You don't have to. You just need to execute it. I have people from all walks of life. I literally taught tens of thousands of people to do this. And the only people that I have, I mean, every once in a while I'll encounter people who are very critical, like on social media or something like that. Oh, this doesn't work. And I've never had anyone who said it didn't work who tried it. The only people that are ever critical of this doesn't work are the people who've never ever tried it. So all I would say is give it a shot. You'll probably find it'll blow your mind and it'll change your life. And it works simply like this. Step 1 is to prepare your mind. If you're taking notes, just write that down. First one is to prepare your mind. My experience is that most people are living in the world that we're living in today. It is a very busy world with a lot of distractions. We carry the equivalent of 1980s Cray supercomputers that used to be the size of like an entire warehouse in our pockets. We have access to the world's information literally at our fingertips. And that's a wonderful gift technology is, but it's also a gigantic distraction. It used to be back in the day, if you wanted to go like for me to get to San Diego, downtown San Diego is about 13 miles. So if I want to go see the baseball team, I just jump in my car and I drive down there. It's like 20 minutes. Well, listen, back about 300 years ago, if I needed to get downtown, that's 13 miles, man. That's going to take me about 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, 5 if I'm going a little bit slower. During that time, I didn't have a radio or even a podcast or TV. I had either human communication or I was just walking and thinking. And so our lives in the past were much more conducive to the frequency of hearing from God than our lives are now, which is fine. It just means that you simply have to slow your mind down, and that's done with breathing. There is from the Bible to the ancient arts, one of the most powerful ways to connect emotionally and mentally with the divine is simply by controlling your breathing. Just breathing in through your nose, out through your nose, focusing on your breath for a certain period of time, just to slow your conscious mind down, ideally to just kind of move it to the side for a little while so that you can have better control or access to your mental interface. I don't have time to talk about the 3 parts of the mind. Certainly it's in the book. Conscious is your connection to God. The subconscious is the missile seeking the target, like I said. And your conscious mind is what you're listening to me right now, or when you're typing a letter, you're typing, or you're having a conversation, you're focused on that. And the conscious mind can typically do one thing at a time, where your subconscious can do thousands at a time. And so one of the keys to the breathing is just to kind of slow the conscious mind down a little bit to get access to the subconscious mind, which is where the actions. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to ask 2 questions. And usually I have people just journal the answers. The first question is, what lies do I believe about me? The second question is, what is true about me? By the way, that's in the first exercise. There are 7 exercises. So day 1, you ask God about you. Day 2, you ask God about him. Day 3, you ask God about your past. Day 4, you ask God about your future. Day 5, you ask God about your money, and so on. And so the first question is, what lies do I believe about me? And the second question is, what's true about me? Give yourself a few minutes on each one of those questions. And then when you're sitting there, just journal the answers. And all you have to do is write down whatever you hear, see, sense, feel, imagine, anything that comes to mind. You don't have to edit. Sometimes the editor is the thing that gets in the way. Sometimes you'll see a memory. Sometimes you'll see a picture. Sometimes you'll hear something in this still small voice. Sometimes you'll hear someone else in your past saying something. You just write it down. It'll make sense as you get farther along in the exercise. But you just journal the answers. If you're in, I guess you can't see the wide view, but if you're in looking at a video of me in the studio, you can literally see like 20 journals. This is my last 10 years where the journals of just sitting there listening and hearing from God. And then what you do is you take those belief systems and you recode your mind with those. So for example, if I heard the lie is that you believe you're alone, but what's true is that I've always been with you, I would simply say, I release the lie. I'd say it out loud too. I release the lie that I've been alone, and I choose instead to believe that you're always with me. When that happens, I could show you literal scientific proof. The moment that happens, that you make those statements, it's more than just a statement. When you say it and you believe it, your mind, your literal mind, like your actual wiring begins to rewire. And I've got videos of neurons literally disconnecting and reconnecting to new neural networks. The moment that you believe something new, your mind literally rewires itself. And when it does that, old thought patterns go away, new thought patterns show up, and new actions show up with that. So just a summary, just first 5-7 minutes, maybe just a little bit of breathing, prepare your mind. Second part is just to ask 2 questions. And the third part is to recode your mind using 2 statements. And if that was confusing, either read the book or just use the audios. They're totally free. I'll give you the website. It's godtalksbonus.com. So if you go to GODTALKS, that's God Talks, and then the word bonus, godtalksbonus.com, you'll get access to those 7. There's 7 days. They're 15 minutes each. You can stream them right on iTunes. Super easy to listen to. Some beautiful music in the background that was actually created by one of my students. Just beautiful classical music that just kind of gets you into the zone. And and I challenge you to do it. I tell you what, I get a lot of people, story after story, man. I get a lot of emails from people whose lives were changed by simply trying out the first exercise. And I do get some emails from people who are like, this doesn't work. And I'm like, you got to try it first before you tell me that, because I haven't had anyone that gave it a shot that said that. So that's my challenge for you.
Yeah. Is this process that you just described, is that what God Talks is, or do you have another name for what you just described to us?
I mean, so God Talks essentially is a process of having a conversation, a listening to a conversation with God, right? I know a lot of people who go to church and are like, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And that's cool. It's okay to talk to God. That's a one part of it. But my experience is, in John 1, he describes himself as the Word. You got to figure if somebody's calling themselves the Word, that they have something to talk about. And my experience is that God is actually always talking. It's just that we're barely ever listening. And some of the greatest solutions, some of the biggest ideas, some of the biggest breakthroughs, some biggest peace in your life, some of the hugest moments that you may be missing out on are coming on the other side of that conversation. It takes a little courage, I will just say, especially if you've been hurt by traditional religion, or you grew up in a place where it was forced on you. Sometimes it takes a little bit of courage just to get back into that. But I think you'll find that there's a lot of peace. There's a lot of joy in that conversation. And the worst thing that can happen is you try it 15 minutes and nothing happens. That I haven't had any stories of people where that happened to them. I have had a lot of stories where people experience some pretty massive breakthrough. And super fun.
Awesome. Would you like to hear your story?
Me?
Yeah.
Tell me the story.
All right.
That's cool, man. Hit me.
I can't believe I'm here again. I'm coming off of a live event, pushing refresh on my computer, on my couch, looking out over a beautiful view that I have no time to appreciate, because I've been putting all of my effort, all of my time, everything into this event, and I need it to work. And I feel a dropping in my stomach as I'm looking at the numbers of attendees coming in, and it's nowhere near the expectations that I had. And I felt this feeling before. As a fighter pilot, I was teaching other people how to fly, executing loops and maneuvers, and I found myself heading straight up and my F-18 stalling. I see that I have less than a minute before I'm going to crash, and I hear the most important advice I've ever received in my life. Let go for dear life. There's so many questions. Everything about me as a pilot at this moment thinks that my life depends on me fixing this situation, holding on, gripping things. But my training says to let go, and I let go. The jet begins to fall down, and shortly before it goes past the point of no return, it corrects itself and I'm flying again. And I find myself experiencing that same feeling sitting on this couch, trying to run a business instead of trying to fly a plane. And I ask myself, how do I let go for dear life here? I put aside my laptop, close down my phone and all the Slack messages and constant busy distractions that have now become so deeply part of my life. And I start to breathe slowly. And I begin to have a conversation with God, listening, not just speaking, for what was aligned, for what was my truth, for what I really needed in this moment, because I had been trying so hard that I lost all vision. I lost all the love for what I was doing, and I needed to come back into alignment. And I remember after just a few minutes of sitting and tuning in and hearing, you're going to come into a time or you're receiving. And almost just like it was letting go of that steering stick, everything in my mind, 100 questions rose up. What about this? But we're right in the middle of this. How are we going to stir this? How can I let go right now? And I relied on my training and the lessons that I had learned, and I let go. I didn't stop working, but I stopped grinding every single action, forcing every single thing, trying to pull the world towards me instead of letting it come. A few days later, I found myself at an event or speaking with a coach, and they mentioned an opportunity and a possibility to grow my business. And they said, it's going to be $10,000. And I think to myself, well, that's a lot. I don't know if I'm ready to invest in that a month. And something inside me, that intuition, that moment, I felt that message again. And this was the move I needed to make. It was scary. It was strange. It was not what I was aware of or I had in mind for me. But I decided to listen to that voice and follow this practice and commitment. Within a few days of joining that program, my business started to grow, things started to transform, and I built the foundation for the company that I knew was possible, but still didn't quite know how to get to. And I can remember thinking to myself and receiving that wink and knowing that my conversation was answered. My prayers were answered. And I realized that there were so many other leaders out there who were over-gripping, overdoing, trying to hold on to the steering stick of their businesses just like I was on that plane. And how easy it would be, what would be possible for the world if these leaders let go and came back into alignment with what they're doing. And then in the next 45 minutes, that's what I'm going to be teaching you about, how to have your own conversation with God and use it to guide your business through the biggest challenges and decisions and junctions of your life.
That's so cool, dude. That is so cool, man. That's really cool. So you just sitting there taking notes and moving bits and bots around to form that story. That's super cool. That's really good, man. I know a lot about story, and that is really, really good. You do really well. You're like, I see, I hear, I feel. That's part of like the process there. Super, super smart. Anyway, that's a cool story. You play that in the podcast? Like we're still doing the thing, right?
Yeah, we're still on the show.
Yeah, good. I hope that you hear that. That was awesome, man. So that's your process. I love it. Yeah, that's really good. And the way that you set up the conflict was perfect too, because the setting somebody in the moment where you're like, I'm sitting there refreshing my screen,
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really good.
Appreciate it.
I'm
cool, glad to be of service as well, especially to an expert speaker and storyteller like yourself. I'm certain we could come up with hundreds of them just based on the few little slivers of adventures you've given.
Yeah. I'm better. I'm not as good at story as I think I am though. Cause I had a guy, my last book, I had a friend of mine who's a Hollywood story coach review my book before it got published. And he was like, yeah, it needs some work. I was like, I thought it was awesome. But anyway, so yeah, you can always get help. You can always get help from people like Kyle who know what they're doing, man. That's awesome, dude. That's very cool.
Thank you so much.
Very cool. Well, good job.
Will you tell us, do you have any like closing thoughts for us based on this conversation? And where can we go to get your book, get these downloads and learn more about
closing thoughts. If you ever want to get someone to really dial in your storytelling, you talk to Kyle Gray from the Story Engine. That's my first thought. Just so you know, what he just did there is there's a whole state in our union called the Show Me State. And the best part about business is what I love about business. Like I hired a salesperson last year, and I was like, the best part about hiring a salesperson, because if they're doing good or not. If they're bringing a bunch of sales, hey, you're doing great. If they're bringing zero sales, and I said, I told her when she came on board on our onboarding call, I said the best part about sales is how you're doing. And what he just did is he just demonstrated what he does, not just say like I'm a great story expert, but he did it. And demonstration is better than whatever word I'm trying to rhyme with demonstration, with telling you about how great you are. So that's that. By the way, the book God Talks is available wherever books are sold. Amazon's where I sell most of my books. Amazon usually discounts the book too, so you might as well get it there. My website's godtalks.com, godtalks.com. I told you already, the free stuff is at godtalksbonus.com. You can either write down godtalksbonus.com, which is a really easy website to remember, or you can get the book, and when you open the book on the first page, it says godtalksbonus.com. But I highly recommend doing the exercises. If you're up for it, I highly recommend reading the first couple chapters of the book and then doing the exercises. In the first couple chapters, I go through the science, the neurology of personal change. You would think because it starts as God talks, it would be like all wooey spiritual stuff. But I believe in things that work right here on planet Earth, not that sort of like are like all floaty and made up.
Hmm.
And so we start talking about neurology, how the brain actually works first, because you are going to be changing your brain and you're going to be adjusting your brain patterns. And I want to just teach you the subtle neurology of the brain. And once you know how to do it, frankly, you can change almost anything that you want to. So that's super helpful. So yeah, grab the book, come to an event, tell us your story. Let's go on a journey together and change the world.
Awesome. Ed, it's been a blast. I'm excited to try the process out myself. And thank you so much for joining us on the Story Engine podcast.